Welcome to the Evolution of a Property Business podcast, brought to you by Sam Watterson.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Evolution of a Property Business. Today I am very honoured to welcome not just a business owner, but a true property entrepreneur, Sally Lawson. Thank you for joining me, Sally.
Hello, Sam. Thank you for having me.
Now, as I do with all my guests, we've had a quick prep call, and honestly, I've never made so many notes. You know, you've done so much. So let's get stuck straight in. And I think the amazing thing about your story is you started as a landlord at 18.
That's right. It was 1987, going into 1988, when I was buying my first property. Those of you that are as long in the tooth as I am will know that that is exactly the time the interest rates were going up to 15%. And as I was going through the property purchase on this little bedsit in Dudley for £27,000, which is what I bought in 1988, the interest rate started off at about 10%, and by the time I'd finished the purchase, which was about 6 weeks in those days, it got up to 15%. It was eye-watering, absolutely eye-watering. And but I still went through the purchase and bought my little bedsit flat in Netherton, Dudley, for £27,000. The interesting thing about that story is, though, Sam, is that I actually sold that flat 10 years later for £27,500. So I made a whopping £500 in 10 years, because as soon as I bought it, it went down to 14,000 in value, and then I had to wait for it to go back up. So it was a really, really difficult time in the 80s, towards the end, buying properties there. But yep, that's how we started. That's how we got here.
A good baptism.
Didn't put me off.
So I'll ask you a little bit more about that. But before I do, can we have a quick introduction to who you are, where you operate, and what you do?
Yeah, sure. My name is Sally Lawson. I've been a letting agency veteran for 32 years now. It seems like such a long time, but it also seems like just yesterday. This is my passion. This is my family. This is what I do. I love this industry, and I'm quite proud to say I've worked in most areas of it. So it's been a phenomenal place to be. And I think the thing that I love about this industry, it's full of so many people that really care. And also it's an industry that is so varied. You never know what you're going to be doing from one day to the next. So that it's certainly not boring. And that's what captured my eye when I first came across a letting agent in my little Netherton flat. So it certainly is the place to be. And thank you very much for having me here, Sam.
Great. So the flat you bought at 18 then, was that just something you were working, you saved up the money and saved up the deposit? How did you come across becoming the landlord then? What was your motivation?
Do you want the real story? Okay, so I grew up in foster care, which meant at the age of 16 you're out on your ear. So I was living in a rented flat with the receptionist at my workplace in Birmingham, and we were living on this, I shan't mention where, but a really, really bad council estate in the south of Birmingham, and all sorts of things were going on, cars being burnt out, properties being robbed, the name. I had to get out of there. I just knew I had to get out of there, but I was like 16, 17 years old, so I had to wait. At the age of 17, a colleague of mine said, I'm selling my flat. Would you be interested in buying it? And I went, yeah. Now, I was earning a lot of money, Sam. At the age of 16, I was a 40% taxpayer. I was earning an absolute ton of money doing sales. I was doing really, really well. So I was just stashing this cash. So I was in this council flat with literally wads of cash shoved in the wardrobe. Didn't know what to do with it. Not really old enough to do anything with it. So just started stockpiling cash. And she said, do you want to buy my flat? And I thought, well, why not? Let's buy a flat. So she threw me in her little Fiesta. I think it was an X2, I think. And we drove over to this flat, and we looked at it and thought, yeah, I love it. Let's buy it. £27,000 it was. It was a bedsit. You could almost touch each side with one arm out this way and one arm out that way. Yeah. But I was so proud to be a homeowner. Those are the days of 5% deposits, and much easier to get mortgages all done through Prudential as it was at the time. And I was actually 17 when I started the process to buy it, and I completed on the day after my 18th birthday.
Brilliant.
So it was a very different world then.
Was it a flat you lived in then, or did you just rent it straight out?
No, well, the funny story with this is I actually moved into it, and the flat was in Cradley Road in Netherton, which is in Dudley, if any of the listeners are familiar with Dudley. And I moved in, and you know that lovely feeling you get when you first move into a flat, and it's like, this is mine, I own it, I'm a homeowner. It was so exciting, I can remember. And then the first night I was lying there on my mattress on the floor, as it was, because I hadn't got a bed at that point, and all I could hear from next door was the noise of something like going on all night. And I thought, my goodness, what's going on? And the neighbours were banging on the door, Donna, be quiet, Donna, shut up, all this sort of stuff. Anyway, I'd bought a flat next door to the local prostitute.
Oh no.
And anyway, after about 6 months, I couldn't take it anymore. So I did what any self-respecting landlord would do. I decided to rent it out.
Pass it on to somebody else. It's interesting then that you were working in sales straight out of school, I guess. So you must have a natural flair for sales. Is that something you've found has benefited you throughout your business life?
Yeah, I think because of my upbringing, I always had to be a little bit gobby, I suppose. As in, I always had to defend my corner, and when I was used to, just coercing conversations to get to a point of placidity, and so I didn't really intend to go into sales. But somebody I knew, her mother, said she was working at this place and there was some jobs going, do you want to come along? And we were actually selling timeshare is what we were doing, which ended up hitting the news in the 90s, but in the 80s it was quite common ground, and I worked there for about 18 months, so it was a really good gig actually. They gave us 2 weeks of training. They taught us to write upside down on yellow paper with black pens, really bizarre, can still do it now. And I was top sales for about 18 months. It was an amazing job, it really was.
And so you were actually selling property in theory, so straight in from 16 into the property industry. So let's go back then. Obviously the name of the podcast is The Evolution of a Property Business, and we like to look at people's stories and how it's evolved. So you went from being a landlord of a single flat at 18 to starting a letting agency not so long after. So if you want to give us a bit of a timeline of the early years and how your journey progressed through the different
well, it's interesting. A lot of people I've spoken to around the time of the 90s, a lot of people that ended up setting up letting agencies did so because they either worked for or used a letting agency that was pretty bad. And my experience is exactly that. When I rented out my flat, the letting agent that came around showed me around, and I remember thinking, what a cool job, looking around people's houses. This is awesome. And I said, have you got any jobs going? And they said, yeah. And I got this job with this agent in the centre of Birmingham. And they were absolute slave traders. It was 6 days a week. We were earning like £140 a week for 6 days, which was really low wage even in them days. And certainly a lot less than I was used to earning, because all the promises of commission and this, it just never happened. Landlords were coming in screaming at us daily, where's my rent? Where's my rent? It was a horrendous place to work. And the guy I was working for was quite chauvinist as well. So I was doing quite a good job, or I thought I was. I mean, I was 18, so, you think you know it all at 18. So maybe I'm slightly blinded, but I thought I was doing a great job. And then this guy got another bloke in and said, right, now you teach him how to do it and he's going to be your boss. That was the point. I thought, right, this is not the place for me. And so anyway, I did that. I trained this guy, I did whatever. And then I decided, right, I'm going to set this up for myself. How difficult can it be? Lettings. I mean, all you've got to do is find a tenant and a landlord and put the two together and sign a photocopied tenancy agreement, as it was at the time. This is easy, no problem. So I did. So I left and I set up my own letting agency in 1990. Called it Lawson's, which was then my boyfriend's name, because I didn't want my ex-boss knowing I was anything to do with it. And that was the beginning of it. So we launched it. Of course, there was a lot more to learn, as I found out later.
And when you say Lawson's, as in your boyfriend's name, is he now your husband?
He was his ex.
Oh, right, okay. Fair enough. We won't go there. So that's brilliant. So you were running the agency then for a number of years, and was it, you were telling me before, about 2010 you started looking into the franchise model and set up, I believe it's Concentric Lettings, is that right?
Yeah, so 1990 I set up Lawson's. We were based in Sutton Coldfield, but most of our business was coming from Wolverhampton. So we moved to Wolverhampton in 1995, moved the business to Wolverhampton. And by 1995, which was 5 years in, we were about 400 properties under management. We had about 10 staff. It's a very different world. In 1990 and 1995, there was no email, there was no online. I can remember someone saying to me about Google. I'm like, who's ever going to use Google? I can remember all those things going back into the 90s. It was just bizarre.
Yeah.
Back on it. But we grew really, really fast. And in them days, remember, we were probably one of 2 letting agents in the town, whereas now you'd be looking at 67 letting agents in an average town. So we grew really, really fast. By around 2000, so 10 years in, the business was pretty much stable. And I spent most of my time not in the business, but on the business, creating structures and processes and systems, which is I love it. I'm a mechanical mindset. So I see something and I see a system. I just see systems.
Yeah.
And so I just mechanicalized everything. There was a process for everything. Even emptying the dishwasher, there was a process for absolutely everything. So by 2010, 10 years later, I was absolutely bored stupid. I systemized everything. We got Investors in People awards. We're having awards for this, that, the other. And I started interviewing business coaches because apparently that's the thing that you do. So enter the business coaches, and then they come with their suave suits and their little folders. And it's like, well, I want to do something. I want to do more than this. What can I do? And they go, well, I'll help you with your KPIs. And I'm like, I don't need that. Here's a folder with all those in. And they says, well, I'll help you with your staff training. I says, oh, I've got 3 folders on that. I don't need that. And he says, we'll help you with your systemization. I says, now get out. It was just ridiculous. And in they came, and they were just regurgitating the same stuff over and over again, stuff I'd already done. Just sort of, I don't know how I'd done it, but I just sort of done it just because I'm a mechanical mindset, I guess. But then this one guy came in and he was the scruffiest out of all of them. He was like polyester shoes and a weird haircut and a nasty suit. And I remember walking in and saying, I said, he did all the KPI thing. I went, nope, this is not going anywhere. And actually it was that bad. The staff out the front were running bets on how long they would last in the office. And this guy was given 5 minutes by the top bet apparently out the front. But anyway, he was in for about half an hour. And at the end of it, he said, none of this is going to work. He said, I've got an idea. Let me come back to you. I thought, oh, well, that's different anyway. So he came back a couple of weeks later and he said, I've got a plan. He said, how about you launch a franchise? He says, we don't change anything within Lawson's. What we do is we sell Lawson's. I said, sell Lawson's? I said, I don't want to sell a business. That's not the idea. I said, I'm only 30 something. I don't want to sell. I want to, do something with it. And he said, no, we take the model that is, you've systemized and automated and written everything, every process for everything. Let's take that and turn that into the model and we'll create a franchise system. I thought, okay, now you've got my interest.
Yeah.
And that's where 2010 we launched the franchise, Concentric Sales and Lettings. It was a different name because he was involved and we wanted to keep it separate. So it may have been the wrong decision, but that's the decision we made at the time. Within about 18 months to 2 years, we had a network of 10 branches across the country, and it was going really, really well. It was good.
But you said that you kind of fell out of love with the franchise model.
Yeah, for me, by about 2017, it was actually around 2015, 2016, when sometimes you take a job or you do something and you're just not in love with it. And yeah. I think that's where it was. It wasn't for me. I love standing on stage. I'd spent like 3 years on stage everywhere around the country, from Wembley to Chelsea Football Club, alongside these amazing people. I love being on stage. I love coaching. I loved helping people. I love working with people. And the other thing we were really good at, after doing it for 20 odd years, was property management. We were really good at property management, so compliant and all this process driven and all that sort of stuff. It's like, these are the two things we love, but this franchise thing in the middle, it just seemed to get in the way. I didn't like it. I just felt trapped in something I didn't really want to do. So 2017, we stepped away from franchising. And that's when we decided that we're going to focus on the two things that we're great at. We're going to do Tenancy Management Hub, which is what we do, where we manage properties for letting agents, white label. And we're going to do Agent Rainmakers, where we coach letting agents. And those are two things that we focus on now. My focus is Agent Rainmaker. My co-director, Dawn, runs the other business. So we just focus on the things that we love. And I'll be honest now, Sam, it's like it's like a hobby. I love it. I love what I do now. It's like every morning I'm like, yeah, come on, let's get to it. I don't stop thinking about it. I'm enthused, I'm motivated, I'm inspired, I'm awake, I'm alive. It's a breeze, absolute breeze. So sometimes you just got to follow your heart really and do what you love, and sometimes step away from a very good business because it's not really ticking those boxes. So that was me in 2017.
And what people listening or watching on YouTube should appreciate is you've only got so many hours in the day. So if you're not enjoying something, take your time and your mental involvement and your focus to something else that you do enjoy. And I've definitely got better at thinking, do you know what, I'm not enjoying that. I'm going to change it or stop it and focus on the things that I do enjoy. So it's really good to hear that.
And I think you're so much more effective as well. If you're doing something that you love, you're so much more effective. You will work 10 times faster, harder, better. Your brain will work. It's like oil to the cogs really. And when you're stuck in something you don't love, it's not good. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Like walking through mud, I guess.
Yeah, very much so.
So you alluded to there, your speaking. So I've got you down as a public speaker, author, trainer, mentor, letting agent, etc. And we'll try and cover all those bases. So you mentioned you did some speaking, and when we were prepping, you said you did something like 300 speaking events. So what were those stats again? They were quite mind-blowing.
We did 140 speaking gigs in 12 months between 2010 and 2011. So 140. I went from being at BNI with a piece of paper shaking
Yeah.
to Karen saying, right, to launch this franchise, you're going to be out there speaking. I've booked you in to speak at the NEC. I went, the NEC as my first gig in front of 100 landlords. I'm like, oh my Lord, how the hell am I going to do that? And I can remember standing at the side of the stage and she was literally pushing me into it. And then I just thought, how am I going to get through this? And I thought, you heard the word fake it till you make it. I said, I'm just going to be Simon Zucci for the day. So I just pretended to be Simon Zucci for the day in my head and somehow got through it. But after that, we then just signed up for every single speaking gig we could. And for over the next 12 months, we just spoke at every single one of the PIN events. We then launched into doing the progressive events with Rob Moore and all that sort of stuff. So we were just speaking everywhere. 12 months after that day of standing there and being pushed on stage, I was on stage at Rob Moore's Super Conference with over 2,000 landlords in front of me, and I didn't care at all. It was like the nerves had completely gone. So when they say, how do you get over the fear of public speaking? The answer is just do it. And that's all it was. It just getting out there and doing it. So that was cured. I then was a fan because public speaking is quite addictive, and I wanted to do more of it.
Did you do the famous imagine everyone in the audience is naked to
No.
no, I mean,
no, I didn't do that, no.
And did you find the actual speaking part came naturally to you, or did it take a bit of work?
Well, obviously naturals are, I think once you get past the fear, yes, speaking is a natural thing for me. It's a bit like selling, it's a bit like coaching. It's natural because if you understand your topic inside out, and you're talking about your topic, and if you love your topic, then speaking should become natural. The thing that gets in the way for most people is the fear element. So I think you've got to see it as two separate things with public speaking. The first thing is do whatever you can to get rid of the fear, which is basically practice. So join something like BNI, join Toastmasters, offer to speak at the opening of an envelope, anywhere you possibly can, everywhere. I mean, I can remember doing gigs like, there was one I had to drive, it was about 3 hours to go to where was it, Cheltenham Way or somewhere, and it was pouring with rain, middle of winter, dark, those horrible nights where you can barely see the road. And I got to the hotel and there was literally 10 men and a dog, literally a dog in, I was like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 dog. I thought, who would have believed it? And it was actually then that sparked my social media career, because I sat there and just thought, it's taken me 3 hours to get here, 150 quid in a hotel, 3 hours back. I'm out of my fairly new business for like best part of 24 hours to speak to 10 men dog. This is ridiculous. Yeah. And that night on the hotel, I sat down, went onto Facebook, and I went into all the various landlord groups, of which there are hundreds. And in each of the landlord groups, there are thousands of landlords. And I put a post out in each of these groups. It's fairly early day for Facebook. Facebook was around 2011. And I added up the amount of people that post could be seen by in those groups. It was something like 20,000 landlords. And I thought, hold on a second, sitting on my bed, I've reached 20,000 landlords. 24 hours out of the day, I've just reached 10 men and a dog. What are you doing, Sally? Yeah. And that's actually where in 2011, I made the decision to complete, and I'm a bit of an obsessive character in case you haven't guessed. Yeah. I got completely obsessed with social media, and everything was video. I was one of the first people to have influencer videos out around lettings on YouTube. We dominated YouTube for quite a while. We had a 6 million reach on Facebook by 2014. It was just absolutely madness. And so I just went totally full in. I actually remember going to a British Franchise Association meeting and telling them how I spent 8 hours a day on social media, and they all looked aghast. And I thought, what's wrong with you? It's normal, isn't it? It was just crazy in those days. So that sparked that whole new online influencer thing, because just reality, it was just ridiculous all that time for such little reward. So it made sense.
Did you find that the social media thing had changed then? Are you still doing the stuff you were doing then, or have you just become a lot more cute with it, more automated, more systemized? And
more automated, more systemized. I do not spend 8 hours a day on it now. I actually have a team. I have a social media lady, Becky. She follows us around with a camera, so you'll see all sorts of stories and things of what we're having for tea, what the dogs are doing, what we're doing this afternoon, where we're going, every show that we're doing, every event that we're doing, every coaching that we're doing, the lives that we're doing, that sort of stuff. She'll just photograph everything. She's like my B-Rock, like Gary Vee's D-Rock. So she follows us around doing all that sort of stuff. So she does a lot of the social media posting. We have teams all across the world, so we have people doing the ads for us. I've got 2 videographers that I hire here that permanently doing video and editing. I've got a digital marketing producer here that does all the digital marketing, creates all the systems and the processes. I've got another guy here who does all the digital events, runs the events, but also does the email marketing. We've also got people in India, Philippines, all over. So I've surprisingly or non-surprisingly, I've systemized it now.
Yeah.
But when you go back 10 years ago, there was no such thing. So it was just you and a camera going, "Hey, are you?" Blah, 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 blah. You know, it was just really, very, very instant. And you can still do that. You can still do that if you're starting out. But
Yeah.
obviously, with the volume we have, I think we had 99,000 views on our YouTube channel in May. 99,000. I think I'm correct in saying that.
Yeah.
I think it was a lot more than that. But anyway, it was about 99,000 views in May, just from doing what we do. So we're quite small. It's a small niche, so we're just letting agents UK.
Right.
So we can't get the big numbers that you will get with, international brands.
Got you. And that's just all that content is just around the letting agency side of the business and not even taking into account the training. I presume you've got some kind of crossovers there with.
We've got two channels. We've got Concentric TV, which is the letting agency stuff, and that's got about 1,200 subscribers. That's really active. I think I guess about 30,000 views a month. And then Agent Rainmaker is all around letting agency coaching. That's the one with 99,000 views in May. So just depends on what you boost, how many videos you post out, how much you share, the quality of them as well. I think nowadays the evolution of social media is its quality over quantity now. And I think you still need the quantity, but the quality is higher expectations now than it used to be. You've got to be a little bit more savvy. You've got to be better, and you've got to have a very good message to hold people's attention, because there's so much out there now.
You've got to entertain. I think it's not just a case of putting your brand out there with a pitch. It's give people entertainment. And it's one of the reasons why I do this podcast. I want people to get benefit from it and listen to great guests and maybe see things from angles they might not have thought of before. And to be honest, when I got into the industry, and it's part of the notes that I've got written down, I remember, seeing you on Twitter, and I don't even think people still use Twitter. And, you're probably one of the earliest people that I saw who really went in on content marketing. I saw you speak at Matt Giggs's event a few years ago. So, you've definitely been present, and you're someone that I've seen do that and, kind of looked up to. And you mentioned briefly in that last answer about the Agent Rainmaker. So it's probably a good opportunity for me to ask you about this, which is fundamentally your training and mentoring business. So when was it you started that company?
We launched Agent Rainmaker in 2016, pretty much because the tenant fee ban was coming in. And how this started was, tenant fee ban's coming in, what are we going to do? Because we're all going to lose 25% of our revenue. Nobody was talking about it. Someone needed to be that voice. And I could see that at that point I had over 6 million reach on Facebook, and obviously we had the Twitter following, and also we had the YouTube following, and nobody was really not necessarily challenging the government to change it, because I could see this was never going to go away. It was going to come in. But the question was, what as a business do we need to do to recoup 25% of our turnover? I mean, given the fact that most letting agents are only making 10, 11%, that means most people were going to be pushed into negative balance sheets. So we needed to do something. And so I sort of made it my mission to find an answer to how we could beat the tenant fee ban in our businesses. How could we generate an extra 25% of revenue? And I went around the country speaking to letting agents all the way up from Scotland right down to the south coast. So Scotland was really useful because they'd lost the tenant fees in 2012. So I spent a lot of time up there. I also went over to America to see what they're doing over in the States, because they're usually a lot better than us at marketing and generating leads and generating profit. And they're in the top 5 most profitable industries, whereas here in the UK, we are 96th. We're near the bottom. We're so unprofitable as an industry. It's so bad.
Yeah.
And so I started doing loads of R&D and just getting out loads of different places and finding different ways of doing things. Like I say, and I realized that the answer was not in the industry. Everyone was doing the same thing. So there's no point training people to do the same thing but better. The answer was to get out and see what other industries are doing and seeing how we could adapt that into letting agency. And so we turned ourselves into almost a charity to start off with. It was like, what could we do? Let's try it and test it. Let's get a few letting agents together, get them to try and test it, see if it works. If it does, roll it out, look for the next thing. And if you sum up what Agent Rainmaker is, that's what we do. We're constantly looking at what they're doing in the States, over in Asia, in Europe, what they're doing in different places. We talked to the people in Denmark's fascinating, Australia, fascinating, totally different way of doing things. And then said, okay, let's trial that here. We run trials, we run tests, then we automate it, systemize it, and we train it out. So the stuff that we coach here is totally different to anything you get from any industry trainer. We're not going to say, well, here's how to do power hour, and here's how to do some valuations, and this is how you convert not only to fully managed, but doing it standard style. It's very different, very different. And so what that means is we spend a lot of time in the US. I've been there twice this year, and we've got another 2 trips this year planned, because we're constantly trying to work with people that are doing stuff that we're not here in the UK, so that we can learn it, test it, trial it, and put it out. So we're a coaching company. We run events. We run about 90 events a year, coaching for business owners, letting agents, their staff and teams, all around making more money. And our mission is to get letting agents to a 50% profit margin as a norm. Now, that's a big task, because currently they're at about 11.9% according to the Plimsoll report. So it's a big task.
So just to put a bit more emphasis on that, so there was a report, the Plimsoll report, that looked at all agents, small, medium and large, and came up with an average profit margin of 11% across the board. And your mission is to drive the profitability of agencies up to 50%. And I think, did you say within your members, they're up to about 35 now, and some are even 50, 60%?
Yeah, so we set a mission about 4 years ago, loosely around 4 years ago, to get to Operation 30. We called it Operation 30. My inner circle, it's the top people here in Agent Maker community, says, right, can we get to 30%? Can we get to 30%? And literally in about 12 months, they went bang, 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 bang. They got their businesses to 30%. We thought, okay, that was a bit easy. Let's see if we can go to 50%. And we set the mission to go to 50% a couple of years ago. And it was actually in March 2021 last year. I remember it because we were running our ARX Mastery event. And our first member came forward at Mastery and said, I've hit 50%. In fact, it's 61%. And we're like, what? No way. And then this sort of fell like dominoes. And they're like, yeah, I've done 50%. Another one's done 62%. Another one's 61%. One did 61.7%, 54%, loads at 45 and 46%. It started to go. As soon as I see it, Sam, a bit like the 4-minute mile. Everyone said it couldn't be done.
Yeah.
Until somebody did it.
Yeah.
And now we know you can run a letting agency at 50 and 60% profit margin, and we have the template for that. We know it can be done. It's just a case of, do you want to do it? Yeah. Are you going to make the changes to do that? Which means you're not going to run around doing stuff for free for everybody. You're not going to be everybody's friend. You're not going to be focused totally on the lets and all that sort of. You're going to focus on the business. You're going to look at the numbers. You're going to analyze the numbers. You're going to squeeze the juice. You're going to automate. You're going to systemize, which I know is something you're passionate about. And you're going to really fine tune that business so like it's a well-oiled machine. Then you'll get to the 50%. But you're not going to do it by just trying to do everything yourself and running around like a crazy headless chicken. You're going to have to make some changes. So we now know it can be done. We know what the picture looks like. We know that there's a massive difference in the structure of business. For example, a standard 11% profitable business has 50% of its outgoings is staff, 50%.
Right.
Whereas we know a 50% profitability business has 25% of its outgoings is staff. Okay. So we know the breakdown of what a 50% profitability business looks like, and we know the techniques to get there. So it's just now convincing the industry that that's what they need to do. But they might not want to. They might want to stay at 10%. Who knows? But with the legislation coming, the regulation changes, I don't think 10% is enough for the risk that we take and the liability we carry personally.
I think that's one thing you find from talking to landlords is they just don't appreciate what it takes to do the job. Because I had this conversation with someone, and it was, when you do something for yourself, it's relatively easy. But when you do something and you're doing it in the interest of a client, you have to do it in such a different way. You have to keep such different records, and you have to have different accountability. You can't just apply the same thinking you would do if it was your own. When even so much as a simple thing like having a record of every conversation you have. So if there are any disputes, you can prove that you've been looking after it. And I think for me personally, I think what we need to do as an industry is educate the landlords more and put more content out there, rather than boring them to tears with the usual stuff, is actually demonstrate what we do on a day-to-day basis and give them the opportunity to actually find out for themselves.
Absolutely. And a really interesting stat that came out in a recent report, the white paper that came from the government, one of the most scariest stats for me as a letting agent and in the position I'm in with the people that I serve, is that only 18% of landlords, according to the government's white paper, only 18% of landlords use letting agents for property management.
Right.
18%.
So there's a lot of people out there who are...
letting agents are feeling like there's no landlords out there, but
Yeah.
it's not there's no landlords, they're just not using you.
Yeah.
And it's really scary from an industry perspective because we all know most landlords need us.
Yeah.
I do, I might not me, but the letting agency branches, we do landlord seminars, and I've done landlord seminars since 1997. So we've done them routinely every quarter since 1997, and we quite often give them legislation tests just because it's fun. Stick a bottle of champagne at the front. This is going to go to the landlord that can write down the most pieces of legislation that they know the names of, and in 20 years, the most we've ever got is 7.
Right.
Most landlords only know 7 pieces of legislation. That's the best ever. Whereas you and I know there's 170 pieces of legislation just to stay compliant. So landlords need us. And obviously with the regulation coming, hopefully that it will start to all become more clear as to what is required to manage a property correctly. But I think that is the most scariest stat I've seen in the last 12 months. 18% of landlords using letting agents for property management, and only 50%, according to the stats in here, only 50% are using letting agents to let their property. So it's not a shortage of landlords that we've got at the moment. It's a shortage of landlords using us. So what you're saying there, education, information, absolutely spot on. And also new ways of marketing. If your standard marketing is just aiming at standard landlords, then you're missing 80% of the market.
Yeah, definitely. Some good thoughts there. So from the Agent Rainmaker point of view, there's an annual event you do, a live event. Is it called Agent Rainmaker Live?
Yeah, it's awesome, Sam. You should come along, actually.
Like a festival, is it?
Yeah, it's in November this year. It's not a festival. It's a conference. It's a conference like any other conference. Slightly American, so we do play lots of loud music and there's lights whizzing around and we have a lot of fun, loads of swag. We really encourage people networking and talking to each other so everyone gets to know each other and they're all sharing ideas. I mean, one of the big challenges I felt in this industry going up to 2018, which when we first ran this event, was letting agents don't talk to letting agents. They just weren't talking to each other. It was sort of, we started to set up a few Facebook groups. We run a group called Agent Rainmaker and people sort of talk to each other in there, but face to face, put them in a room and they're just like, how's business? Fine. Everything's good. Yeah, great. What are you doing to get landlords? Well, the usual. Nobody was talking. I was like, come on, guys, no one's really reinvented the wheel here. We might as well share some notes. So we'd created Agent Rainmaker Live as a national annual conference to bring letting agents together to share loads of strategies like how to get to 50%, how to drive more landlords, how to get these let onlys to do fully managed, how to automate and systemize your business, how to build A-player teams, all those sort of things. But really the core of it was actually to create a fun environment where people can get to know each other and talk to each other. And what we're seeing now is, because we've done 3 now, and this is our 4th this year, that every year the same people are coming back plus new people and everyone's talking to everybody. You've got 3 letting agents from one town driving in the same car. You never would have seen this 10 years ago, coming together and chatting and hanging out together, and new people are coming in and they're like, God, what's this? How come everyone knows each other? But they don't. And then they get in and they join and then they come every year. So it's really an event where you can actually talk to a letting agent and say, I'm really struggling with this, and they will help you. So it's a very, very different construct to a normal conference.
Sounds amazing. I'll definitely speak to you about coming to the next one. I had a conversation with Christopher Watkin, the famous Christopher Watkin, a few months ago. And one of the things I was talking about was how I used to view other agents as competition when I first started. And what I realize now is the property industry is so broad that actually the local independent around the corner is more of a collaborator than the competition. And you should view the sort of big corporates as being the competition. And the little guys, rather than trying to take lumps out of each other and compete, should work together. Because sometimes you have landlords who have properties in areas that you don't cover, that some of covers. And if everybody helps each other out, you can like kind of all rise together. So it sounds like you're kind of recreating that kind of mentality and environment with the Agent Rainmaker. It sounds amazing.
But you're also improving the standards as well. So, I mean, we'd sometimes have like 3 letting agents from one area in one room. And initially it's a little bit like, oh, there's someone else from Newcastle in the room. And it's like, this is great because we've done this for years now. And you can have 3 people learn exactly the same thing, like making videos or building funnels or automating the systems or recruitment or whatever, and they go away, but they'll do it completely differently. Even though they've learned exactly the same thing, they'll do it in a different way that suits them and suits their style. But if everybody upped their game it's better for all of us because our industry is looked down on. And on the veracity index, we're really down the bottom, along with traffic wardens, and I think it was policemen and politicians. We're right down the bottom. The veracity index is the index of likability. We're not liked at all. If we improved the standards across the board, then it's only got to be good for the industry. So I absolutely agree with you. It's about coming together and actually finding better ways to serve our customers, to do what we do, to keep everybody safe and be better. We shouldn't be fighting, we should be talking. And having been doing this now since 2016, the results are phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I'll give you an idea. We've got a guy in Plymouth. He came to Agent Make Alive 2019, before the whole lockdown stuff happened. And he went on from 78k turnover and bailiffs at the door. He went on to add £1 million revenue to his business, and he's now hit 50% profitability. You can see his video online if you want to go and watch it. The guy's name's Tom Soane. And in his town, there was a lady called Sam. And Samantha was like, how come he's done that? And I haven't done that. How come he's managed that? So she came along. Tom is helping her. Within the first 9 months, she'd add £130,000 to her business and was able to get out of she'd been running it for 20 years. And for the first time, she was able to get out of the business, take a step back, spend some time with the children, de-stress, because she was really, really stressed. Yeah. And that's a classic example of two people in the same town helping each other. Now, they're totally different businesses. Tom is all about dealing with investors and buy-to-let and sourcing, and he's got a podcast, and he's called the Anonymous Landlord. He's become quite a brand. He's a huge character. Sam, she's all about systemization, automation process. She's built loads of funnels. She's driving loads of leads into a business. She's put a lettings manager in place. She's automating and systemizing everything from home. Totally different way of doing things, but both trying to achieve the same common goal. So absolutely, start talking to each other. But it doesn't work. If you just go up to someone, knock on the door and say, hey, can you share your best secrets with me? It's not going to happen. So you have to put them into an environment where it's encouraged and it's safe and it's acceptable. And that's what Agent Rainmaker Live is. So we love it. It's really good fun.
Brilliant. It reminds me of the bar industry in the sense that if you put a bar on a street, people will go there. But if you put a bar next door and a bar next door to that, they're not taking customers off each other. What they're doing is they're creating a destination which will attract more people who will then go around all the establishments and everyone will benefit. So in a way, if you're saying that roughly 80% of landlords are not using managing agents and all the managing agents in an area can come together and demonstrate great value, then they will all feed off benefit from the overall impression of letting agents being a much better one than what they would have thought in the past.
Well, imagine if all those letting agents were all educating let-only landlords to the 170 pieces of legislation and the fines and the banning orders and the prosecutions and the rent repayment orders and all the risks that they're taking by not doing X, Y, and Z. If they started to run joint seminars, they started to make joint videos, they started to talk together collectively, but then each had a little edge, like one focused on HMOs, one was standard lets, one dealing with housing benefit, whatever the case may be, they could clean up on a whole market. That hasn't happened yet, but I never know. Maybe one day it will.
Brilliant. So you've done a lot in the industry, and you've been around for 30 years. How has your mindset and the way you think about business and your job changed over the years? How have you changed as a person?
That's a big question, isn't it, Sam? Okay, have I changed as a person? I think I've changed massively, but in some ways not changed at all. I don't know if it's my upbringing or what, I don't know, but I have a curiosity streak. I'm always curious for what's new, what's next. So if I'm on a piece of software and I find a button, I have to check it out. If I hear about something that's new, I have to go and research it, read the books. I'm reading all the time. I'm watching videos all the time. I'll be on a plane tomorrow if I think there's something I'm going to learn in Los Angeles or Boise, Idaho. We were in March. No one's ever heard of the place. We'll go wherever we need to go and learn whatever we can learn. So I think that thing has stayed with me throughout business. And I think that for me is my key to success, is be curious. And the second one, I think, is you've got to get rid of that fear. And Tosin, who does a lot of mindset stuff on some of our events, he has this great analogy. He says that success is not in the comfort zone. It's the other side of the comfort zone. You've got to get into the fear zone. And when you get into the fear zone, that's where you will find success. But eventually that fear zone, the thing that you were scared of, becomes normal. And then what that means is there'll be other stuff in the fear zone. You've got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And I think if you could sum up my 32 years in business, I've just kept pushing, whether it be setting up the business in the first place, moving locations, getting out there in public speaking. You've heard the story, it was petrified. Then it was going on video, dealing with trolls. I mean, when I was talking about the tenant fee ban from 2015, 2018, I got called everything under the sun, including entitled mincer. I don't even know what that means, but I just got called everything, for about 3 years. So then that was a challenge in dealing with the trolls and that sort of thing. And then, setting up a franchise, and then closing the franchise, and then launching a training company, and standing on stage and booking an event for £200,000 and thinking, what if we don't fill it? So all those things are fear zone stuff that you've just got to keep pushing, and just never stop growing. And I think that's the answer. I think you actually start to get old when you stop growing. That's my theory. I'll let you know in 10, 20 years whether it's true, but I actually think that's when you start to get old. And I think you've just got to keep going. My team here are all in their 20s, 25, 26, really young. And I can hold my own out there talking about pixels and widgets and funnels and click funnels and opt-ins and opt-outs and upsells and downsells and the whole shebang. I can hold my own. They sometimes get me, but I'm quite proud of that.
Brilliant. I wrote some questions down actually while we were chatting, and one thing I was going to ask you is, you talked a lot about going overseas and looking at how other people do things. What was probably the biggest aha moment you had when you went to another country and you saw someone doing something in a completely different way and you thought, why have we never done that? Or, real just innovations you thought, that's brilliant, let's bring that back to the UK.
I think there's three. The first one was Funnel Hacking Live in 2018. When I first went to Funnel Hacking Live in 2018, which is a big national conference for marketeers, and I wasn't really supposed to be going. I last minute booked on. I thought, I'm going to go see what all this is about. So I booked on to and went over. My marketing guy was going, but I thought I'd go. And I can remember sitting there being absolutely blown away as speaker after speaker after speaker. I mean, single moms that had launched businesses from home with a funnel selling blocks of wood with alphabet painted on them. And someone else had launched a business for new moms that had just had a baby and were having all the body things go wrong and issues that new moms have. And then another guy that was teaching men how to be men with the Warrior Network, Garrett White, an amazing speaker, the most phenomenal speaker I think I've ever seen. And I just thought, we've got to be able to use this. If every single industry, from blocks of wood to coaching men to be more warrior-like, surely letting agents can use this. And that was the light bulb moment that we need to start automating our marketing, because at that point, letting agents, since we stopped advertising in the newspaper in 2010, letting agents weren't doing anything, making a few videos, bit of social media posts, nothing. We needed to build funnels. So I made that my mission. And that's where these 2 awards came from here. Those are 2 Comma Club awards for building £1 million funnels. So that was the result. 2019 and 2021 was 2 awards for doing that. So that was light bulb number 1. Light bulb number 2 was Norway. So I went to Denmark. And I had a meeting there with a software automation company that said that they don't use portals over there in Denmark. In Norway, there's no portals. So there's no any form of portal whatsoever. And I thought, this is interesting, this is fascinating. And what I learned when I went over there was that the letting agents and estate agents over there still control the letting and marketing of their properties. And it made me realise that we don't have to just rely on the portals here. Why don't we take control of some of our own marketing of the properties as well? So that was a big light bulb moment. And the third light bulb moment was Australia, and talking to Andrew Rees from there. And this was a real sort of like, when you stand there and you stop and you think and you question yourself. But he said, our tenancy managers, as in property managers, they build our business. I went, property managers build your business? And he said, yeah. I'm thinking, well, in our businesses in the UK, they just deal with the maintenance and the contract renewals and the vacates, and I couldn't imagine them building the business. And he said, no, we pay them more as per the amount of properties they manage, and they build their team and they build their portfolio and they build the business. That was a light bulb moment. It has transformed my business now. And as a result of that, just from my one branch in Wolverhampton, my tenancy managers made me 17 grand in just 1 month from additional revenue, additional sources, and they manage nearly 300 properties each now. But they each have a team. So they have VAs that work with them. They have all the automation, the systemization. Their job is to look for additional sources of revenue like refurbishments, furniture packs, landlords wanting to sell off-market properties, all those sort of things. They've become money-making centres as a result of that. So I think those are the 3 big ones for me, across different countries and different continents. And there's hundreds more, but if there was 3 big ones, I think those are the big 3 light bulbs for me.
Absolutely brilliant nuggets there. And one thing that you mentioned to me when we were prepping this meeting that I had no idea about was that you'd actually, and I won't say dipped your toe in sourcing, because you did some pretty good numbers. So between 1997 and 2002, you did sourcing and refurbs very similar to what we now call deal packaging these days.
Okay.
So what was that like for you then? I think you said there was some changes in the mortgage market which opened everything up, and you was like picking fruit at those times.
Yeah, so I started in 1990, so I can only talk from then. So from 1990 to 97, so anything before 1997, if you wanted to buy a property, you had to put a business plan together, and you had to go and get a commercial loan and go to the bank manager with your begging bowl. Here's my business plan. I want to buy some property, whatever. And he would approve a commercial loan or not. From 1997, I think there's 4 or 5 mortgage lenders got together. Paragon was one of them, Mortgage Express, and a couple of others. I can't remember the name. Birmingham Midshires was in there somewhere. But they got together and they created the Arla panel of lenders. So Arla drove it. They got these mortgage companies to release buy-to-let mortgages. That was 1997, so stake was in the ground. All of a sudden now, you could get a mortgage on a property based on the rental valuation. This was not acceptable before then, so this was a real changing point. It was around that time I went on a little course with Arla. I think it was actually run by Andrew Reeves, bless him, who's since become a client of ours, which is really bizarre. But he was running some courses on running buy-to-let sourcing service in central London. I thought, well, let's go and see if it works in London. It's bound to work in Wolverhampton, isn't it? So let's go and have a look. So I paid me money. Had an argument with my first husband actually about that, Sam. I said, it's 97 quid. He says, well, if you're going to waste your money on that, I'm having a scanner. I went, you go for it. You have a scanner. I'm going to London. So anyway, I went to London for my 97 quid, and I learnt how to buy properties, charge a percentage of the purchase price, and also sign them up for 2 years management as well. So they have to use you for management and do it that way. As I said to you before, slight and obsessive character. So this became my thing. And I went mad. So at this point, property prices, you could buy a flat in Wolverhampton for £30,000 and rent it out for £450. I bought a house, a 2-bed semi for £28,000 and rented it for £495. It was a different world. It was a very different world. You could buy a property and sell it the same day. You could buy it, remortgage it 6 months later. There was so much stuff you could do that you just couldn't do now. So between 1997 and 2002, in total, I helped landlords buy a shocking over 450 properties in 5 years.
Wow.
Went mad. And refurbishments, I get so excited refurbishments. We did over 250 refurbishments. It got so bad, Sam, in the end, I had to, a bit like an alcoholic, I had to stop.
Right.
It was actually because I was buying a lot for myself at the same time as well. And I can remember standing in this old mansion house, this old Tudor mansion, falling down. The beams are crumbling, the windows are crumbling, the wallpaper was just damp ridden. I can remember being so excited at this Tudor mansion. I was just like, yeah, let's buy it. And I actually said to myself, why, Sally? Why do you want to put yourself through that again? And at that moment, I made a decision not to buy, and that was 2002, and I've never bought a property since. So I just had to literally just stop. So from 97 to 2002, went absolutely mad. 450 properties bought for myself and for clients in the main, and refurbished 250 as well. So yeah, loved it.
So you built a portfolio of your own properties, and then in 2002 decided not to buy any more.
Just stopped.
Do you still own those properties, or have you sold them?
Yeah, still got them. I've got a former hotel here converted into flats, a few more properties. I've got cottages in Wales, villa in Spain, that sort of stuff. But from 2002, I've never bought, except for the house that we live in, I've never bought any more properties. So.
And you just wanted to concentrate your time on the businesses rather than...
Yeah, I mean, it was actually quite a good time to stop because the prices had sort of peaked. So they sort of leveled out after that. Nothing was really exciting. You couldn't get the returns I was used to, which is like 15%.
Yeah.
So it was quite a good time to stop, really. And I just put all of my attention into the businesses, the business as it was at the time, and then later on the businesses. So that became my focus. Did a lot of acquisitions, a lot of buying other businesses. Did about 17 business acquisitions during that time. So I think I just diverted my attention to business rather than property. Which has sorted me well, so that's good.
Brilliant. So my Instagram account has just gone crazy behind me. If anyone's a regular watcher of the YouTube, keep an eye on the Instagram account, and over time, let's watch it go up. So you've seen a lot happen then. What do you think have been the major changes you've seen in the property industry? You talked then about how the mortgages changed in 97, and I was sort of doing the numbers in my head. 2008 was only 11 years. So the bankers only had 11 years to mess it all up, really, and it for all to go kaboom. So what changes have you seen over that time, and how have you adapted to those?
There's been a huge amount of changes in that time. If you go back to 1990 when I first started, you didn't have to do gas certs, electric certs. Inventories were back of a fag packet pretty much. Tenancy agreements were photocopied forms. You just filled in the names and the blanks and moved somebody in. You couldn't do electronic references. It was a different world. So obviously we've seen the intervention of the internet, which has absolutely, totally transformed business. Also the demise of newspaper advertising in 2010, which actually most letting agents just saved that money and didn't put the money anywhere else other than portals, which, as we know, isn't landlord advertising, it's getting the property let advertising. And I think those are major changes. Of course, then we've seen a massive amount of regulations. And if you want to put it into sections, in 1990 to 2000, the government focused on legislating safety. Electric regulations, gas regulations, fire and furniture regulations, all those sort of regulations came out. In between 2010 and 2010, the government started to regulate paperwork. So HMOs, homes and fitness standards, EPC regulations, those sort of things. They started to regulate the paperwork, and website advertising standards agency, BPR, all those sort of different things came in. And then we started to get into the realms of regulating the industry. So we started to see the Deregulation Act and the Homes and Fitness Standard, and now we've got the White Paper and ROPA coming. So what's happening now is they're professionalising the industry. All of those three phases were needed. If you take yourself out of the operational nightmare it causes us on a daily basis, and we all chunter about it, if we're honest, it's like another bit of paper.
Yeah.
But it was all needed. In 1990, when I rented out a property, it didn't have central heating. And if there was damp climbing up the wall, it was like, well, that's just part of the property fabric. There's nothing we can do about that. You know, it was really very bad. So it was necessary that they regulated the safety. It then became necessary that they regulated the paperwork. And now it probably is necessary because if you look at the veracity index and how badly we are seen in the industry, the reason that in America and Canada and Australia and other areas they charge 10 times what we do is because they are licensed, professionally qualified, they're held to a standard. They charge more, they do more, they are more. And so it's got to come. You know, we're now at, 18, 19, 20% private rented sector, depending on which report you read. But we have got to start being better. And so although I chunter sometimes, as we all do, it's all necessary. And really the industry is just being made fit for purpose, if we're honest, to house the nation. If you go back 20 years ago, Sam, we didn't house housing benefit tenants and people with mental illness and asylum seekers. We didn't do that. The council did that. Now we do. And are most letting agents trained to cope with mental illness situations? I mean, we've had tenants that are telling us that planes landed in their garden and things like that. They're obviously suffering. We therefore need to be able to deal with that. Housing benefit, is hugely complex and something that most letting agents ignore. Of course, we've seen in the white paper, they're not going to be able to ignore it anymore. They're going to have to deal with it. But we all know it's very complex. You deal with HMOs, phenomenally complex, dealing with HMOs and licensing and Article 4 and everything else. So without getting too technical, it's going to get technical. And I think if you want to be a letting agent in the next decade, get good at learning. So get good at learning the technicalities, the minutiae of lettings and the peripheral markets that most letting agents ignore, because I believe that's where the money is and that's where the opportunity is, in the complexity. Because landlords don't need us, but if it's complex, they do.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the reasons we do HMOs and moving into serviced accommodation, because it's hard. So we have the value. Now, do you think the government are going to start looking at regulating the do-it-themselves landlords, which could push them towards us if they're more heavily regulated? Or do you think they may just exit the market and think, do you know what, it used to be easy, it's not anymore, I'd rather just sell? How do you see that going?
Well, having read the white paper, quite detailed, they are talking about now that every single landlord will have to be licensed and every letting agent has to be licensed. And even if the landlord uses a letting agent, they still have to be licensed. Their property will have to be uploaded to the government portal, and their property they will have to upload all the requirements like gas safety, electric safety, fire safety, whatever. All that will have to be uploaded onto the government portal as well. So no one's going to escape this now. And also you've got a joining up of the authorities. So if a landlord wants to go dark and hide, it only takes the tenant to complain about council tax. The council tax will inform the tax, will inform the overseas landlord taxation, will inform HHSRS, landlord licensing. So there's going to be no hiding. So yes, I think we are looking at regulation of both landlords and of letting agents. It's interesting to see in Wales, we've had a licensing scheme running for a few years now, Rent Smart Wales, which if a landlord uses a letting agent, they don't have to be licensed. But here in England, they're proposing both. So it's a white paper, so it's not a given and it's not definite, and it's not law yet, it's all proposed, so we don't know what we're going to end up with. But it does look like we're looking at mass legislation or regulation for landlords and for letting agents alike.
Yeah. If anyone's listening to this and panicking, don't. I've experienced so many different pieces of legislation just through the letting agency. And what you do is you just sit down, read it through, get your head around it, and it's okay. But every time there's a major change in the industry, it creates major opportunities. And for new investors, younger investors who are coming at it with a slightly different mindset, all this change will do is stimulate old school landlords to put their properties on the market, which will create more opportunities for you, to start building your portfolios. So my recommendations would be learn the legislation, don't be scared by it, and look for the opportunities from those people that are too long in the tooth or too tired to want to.
And that is happening now. So right now what's happening is you've got a changing of the guard. So if you think of the landlords I was buying property for in 1997 and 2002, their mortgages are now 20 and 25 years in. And they are usually were in their 40s at the time, so they're now getting to retirement. So what we're seeing now massively across the letting agency industry is landlords selling. And their landlords are just saying, it's all getting too complex now, I'm out. But what we're also seeing at the moment is a massive amount of people wanting to buy. So it's not like people are leaving the market, it's a changing of the guard. Yeah. Because there, as you say, we are getting now 60 applications for every property. There is a massive tenant demand. And of course, whenever you have a supply and demand tilt like that, there's only one thing that's going to happen, rents are going to rise, and there's going to be more opportunity for people. So it's a great industry to get into and to buy into. You just can't be lazy anymore. You just have to think about it a bit more.
Definitely. And if you've got a message for anybody who's new into agency or into business, and you could give them some top tips for them starting out, what would you advise?
Very different to what I'd have said 10 years ago. I think if you were going to get into letting agency now, I think the first thing you've got to do is you've got to learn the legislation. There's so many people dive into letting agency without that, and they do look really ridiculous. So you do need to dive into the legislation. Go and get yourself on some ALA courses or something. Just start learning, understanding the legislation that's required. Once you've done that, what you've got to do is you've got to learn marketing. What frustrates me, Sam, is so many people go into business, and I don't care what business you are, whether you're selling widgets or a letting agency or what, if you can't market yourself, don't bother. So get into marketing. And what I would do now, if I was starting again now from scratch, and I've launched dozens of letting agencies from scratch, what I would do now is I would launch a funnel. So I would start an automated marketing system just to build a database of landlords. I'd data capture like insane. So I'd be running ads, driving traffic, offering some sort of opt-in download guide, video series, something to get data capture. Webinars are our number one marketing avenue at the moment. Just do something to get data capture. Build yourself a nice little database, say 5,000 landlords, then launch your letting agency. So I would start off as an educator, influencer, educate yourself, educate your landlords, data capture, build your database, and then launch. That's how I would do it personally, but we're all different.
No, brilliant. Just from what you're saying there, build that database and use that database as your platform. Just on a personal note, I noticed from your Facebook that you've been hitting the gym quite a lot in the last year. I think did you celebrate 12 months of giving it some real good effort? And how has that helped you with your productivity and your business? Because health and wealth do seem to tie in quite nicely together. So I just thought I'd ask you about that.
No, that's fine. I started about 12, it was actually June the 21st or 19th or something last year. It was my first day in the gym. So I just decided that I'm 50. It's a big milestone, hit the 50. And of course, when you get 50, everything goes downhill, so you start to lose muscle mass and you start to lose bone mass as women and all those sort of things. I thought, right, not having that, got to sort that out. So I started reading up on weight training, and everybody was recommending weight training. So I actually built a home gym very slowly, just bit by bit as I needed it. I built a home gym. Started to read books. Guys, if anyone's watching here and is into weight training, write a book for women on weight training, because they're terrible. The books out there are I've read 12 of them. 11 of them were awful. And I found one really good one. I read that. It's called Thinner, Leaner, Stronger by Michael, I can't remember his last name. Thick book, really, really good. I started to watch loads of videos. There's a massive amount of female bodybuilders on TikTok, really motivational, love it. So I'll follow all of those and just really learned and grown over the last 12 months. Now, I'm an obsessive character. So when I get into something, I get into something. So yeah, I'm doing the whole deadlifts and Romanian deadlifts and squats and back squats and pull-up bars and the whole shebang. And I'm absolutely loving it. I wake up, I'm in the gym at 5:30. I feel motivated, inspired. My son is not quite so impressed. He said to me yesterday, he said, "Mother, I don't expect to be turning on Facebook and be seeing your muscles." I says, "Well, James, I'm only copying you and your six pack, so don't worry about it."
It is what it is. Sally,
yeah, loving it, Sam.
Absolutely brilliant to have you on. I've learnt loads. So before I finish, two things. Number one, if there's anything you want to plug, please give it a cheeky plug. But also, if anybody would like to get in touch with you or follow you, what's the best place to find you?
Best place to find me is Facebook. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Although the most common one I would check 2-3 times a day is Facebook. So reach out to me on there. That's always the best place. Check out our Agent Rainmaker website. Go and have a look. We've got loads of one-day little taster days for letting agents. If they're just thinking, I wish I could do something, and you're not too sure, just go on one of our taster days for 97 quid, and we'll give you a good overview of all the things that you can do. And if you fancy loads of fun and talking to loads of letting agents, come along to Agent Rainmaker Live. So that's it, really. Nothing too special, but it's been great to be here today, Sam. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed today. It's been good fun.
Thank you. So thank you so much for making time for me today, and for everybody listening and watching. That was the Evolution of a Property Business podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the Evolution of a Property Business podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.